The last leg of the trilogy in an interesting road here. We have the flyweight title up for grabs between Brandon Moreno, the assassin baby, taking on Deus da Guerra. It's Deiveson Figueiredo. And an interesting thing when you look at this fight, Jussier Formiga's probably sitting back in an armchair somewhere smoking a cigar going, man, if only I did a few things differently when I fought Brandon Moreno, I'd have a win over both of these guys. It's a crazy thing. Jussier, everybody forgets about him. He was pretty good. He was really good. And when you look at this fight, it's an interesting way because in the first fight, Deiveson Figueiredo won the fight, but he didn't because there was that nut shot. Herzog took the point, and that was really a difference maker in that one. So we get the rematch where Brandon Moreno knocks down the champion in the first round. In the second round, Figueiredo kind of gets into it, rallies, and then in the third round, well, it's all Moreno. He wins the belt, emotional scene. And now fast forward into 2022, he's getting gifted belts of Lego in Vegas. And that really is an interesting point. I mean, Brandon Moreno has so many teammates on this card. Morales is now training out of Entram Gym coming out of Ecuador. We have Argentina's Silvana Gomez Juarez training out of Entram Gym. We also have Valdez, who's taking on Frevola on this card out of Entram Gym. So a big time kind of glow up for the team over in Tijuana. And for Brandon Moreno, he does kind of split time now between Tijuana and Las Vegas. And that's another interesting thing. For Deiveson Figueiredo, we talked about it at length going into the rematch, that it was Team Figueiredo. He was investing money into his camp, his friends, his people that train with him. Bet on yourself. He loses that fight. And not that he's not betting, on himself, but he's made that bet and kind of hedged it a little differently because now he's training out a fight ready in Phoenix, Arizona. Santino DeFranco, Eddie Chow. We talked about this camp at length. Vanessa Demopoulos also in this card from Fight Ready if you want to pick somebody that's...
Please do not use her as an example as to why a guy's going to win a title.
No, she's on this card. She's from that gym. But if you look at it for Figueiredo, training with Cejudo, Zhang Wei Li's there. It's champ camp, so to speak, or former champ camp.
Is John Jones there?
John Jones is also now there. Rakic has expressed an interest to fight there.
Athletes.
He's got a big fight coming up against Blachowicz. But when it comes down to this fight, really for Figueiredo, if he couldn't get it done with his team, with his group in Brazil, what a perfect gym to train out of now.
Oh, 100%. And that's always what you do. Like sometimes people make these crazy gym changes and you sort of question the move. But with Figueiredo, it does make sense. He trained at his own gym for 2 fights against Moreno. They fought to a draw in the first one. So, okay, skill-wise, we must be close. And then Moreno made the improvements that Figueiredo wasn't able to make in his second fight. So if you're in Figueiredo's mind, you're like, okay, I have to change something because I didn't make any improvements between the first and the second fight. So I think it will be a massive benefit for Figueiredo going into this third matchup. But just aside from the X's and O's, why aren't more people excited for this matchup? Like, I haven't seen a massive buzz around this fight, but to me, this is as good as MMA gets. Deiveson Figueiredo doesn't have a true weakness in his game. He's a good wrestler, he's got great submissions, he's one of the most powerful punchers we've ever seen at this weight class, and on the flip side, Brandon Moreno's like if Nate Diaz was actually like really good at everything. He's got great cardio, he's got great boxing, phenomenal jiu-jitsu, like there's nothing to dislike about either one of these guys. They represent MMA at its highest peak. I just wish that there was more buzz surrounding this trilogy.
The reason why is because neither guy had to fight Demetrius Johnson to win the belt, and because you have a heavyweight title main event. That's why they didn't make the thumbnail for this overall full card video, but they definitely deserve their own credit. And when you look at this fight, I mean, for Deiveson Figueiredo, is he a sushi chef on the side? Yeah. He is. Is he an adept martial artist? Yeah, he is.
Hairstylist?
He's a hairstylist, too. If Deiveson Figueiredo could pick a perfect walkout song for this fight, Canadian fans are going to like this one. Damn forbidden streets I talk with. Every single step I walk with. All the lovers in the world. Gowan. Wow. You know, he sings for Styx now. Kind of fun if you want it from that way. But he is definitely the most interesting man in MMA. And again, when you're training with a guy like Henry Cejudo who says that, to kind of fix the holes in John Jones' game and try and coach him through, he just needs to be tweaked a little bit. That's kind of an interesting mentionable.
I think more in life than MMA.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. But when I do look at it, I mean, Figueiredo definitely with the right group. Work some of those takedowns. Work your overall complete game. Because we know for Deiveson, he has power on the feet. but he kind of throws with reckless abandon sometimes, and that's what gets him caught. Not just other fights, but fights specifically against Moreno, who's great 1-2 down the middle.
And I feel like the Pantoja fight kind of exemplifies that perfectly for Figueiredo. He's super aggressive. He's marching down another knockout and heavy-handed power puncher. But when Figueiredo is able to land his shots effectively, and when he does have great accuracy, there's not a person who can stand in front of him on the feet. I don't care how technical TJ Dillashaw is. If he had fought Figueiredo instead of Cejudo, he probably gets knocked out by him too. Like, that's the level of power I put Figueiredo at. But the weird trade-off with great knockout power, Michael Bisping always said this about him and Vanderlei Silva. Like, striking-wise, they're probably both about a 10 out of a 10, right? Like, they're both really good strikers, but they do it in very different ways. Vanderlei Silva tries to knock you out with every punch that he throws, similar to Deiveson Figueiredo, whereas Bisping, very technical striker, he realizes that he's going to need more volume to get his opponent out of there. And I honestly think that there's a good parallel in this fight between that one, because for Moreno, he doesn't have the natural power Figueiredo has. I know he dropped Figueiredo in their second fight, and oddly enough, Figueiredo has yet to drop Brandon Moreno, but I still think Figueiredo hits way harder than Brandon. The difference is speed and cardio make up for all of the issues that you have with power. And when you are a power puncher and when you do go for the knockout and when you aren't able to get that knockout, you're going to get tired as a result of it. And what I thought would happen in their second fight was I thought Figueiredo would be able to land those power shots early, hurt Moreno to the point where Moreno was a lesser version of himself later, and Figueiredo would be able to take over where he wasn't able to in their first fight. In this third fight, though, I look at Figueiredo as like an NBA All-Star who's made like his 12th All-Star game at this point, and you don't really know what next year is going to look like. Like, he's Dirk Nowitzki in 2013. Like, he's still really good, but I don't know if he's still that guy who can get you to the finals, because at 125 pounds, when the weight cuts are starting to become an issue, when you do start to see him a step slow, it's really hard to get that back. And the last thing I'll say is that if Figueiredo fought at 135 pounds, I honestly think he could get into the top 5 of that division, even though it's the hardest division in the UFC, arguably, because that's how good his skills are. I just think at his size, at this age, with this weight cut, he's doing himself a disservice cutting down to 125 pounds still.
The only pushback that I have against that, and for anybody that's going to go out there and really kind of rag on his cardio or rag on the fact that he throws too many power shots early, he was able to do these things in the fights with Joseph Benavidez. He was able
Look at the Monkey God fight, though.
Yeah, but he was able to do these things in the first fight against Moreno, and it wasn't really that big of an issue. But the big key here for me, Brandon Moreno, straight shots down the middle, 1-1 in the second fight. Yeah, it was his boxing. Yes, it was his movement. His kicks really took over in that fight, too. And that's one of those things that Moreno invests in the leg kicks more than most guys at flyweight. The other thing for Figueiredo, you touched on it, the power. He has the number 1 stat of all time in this flyweight division that was always reigned by Demetrius Johnson. Most knockdowns ever in flyweight history at 8. Now, tied for first in flyweight finishes with Demetrius Johnson, tied for second with knockouts with 4, and he has the second best significant strike accuracy ever, behind Demetrius Johnson, at 56.9%. Moreno hangs around in a lot of categories, not necessarily top 5, but the craziest thing for me is Brandon Moreno in the return is 4-0-2. What a weird thing to have. A draw against Askar Askarov, a draw against Deiveson Figueiredo. Should have been a loss, but don't kick people in the nuts.
I thought he should have beat Askarov, to be completely fair.
And so on and so forth. But the craziest thing is, the UFC cut him because he lost to Sergio Pettis and Alessandro Pantoja, the Bellator champ, and the guy that will probably get the next title shot. Like, it's crazy to think of that. Beats Michael Perez outside of the UFC with LFA and ends up back in, fights Askarov, so on and so forth. Storybook story. But Matt, the odds for this one, Brandon Moreno open to minus 185. He's a minus 174 right now in best fight odds. For Figueiredo, open to plus 155. He's plus 145. So we go into the third fight, if you will. Over on Topology, we haven't looked at the votes. Surprise us there to you. I'm going to say over under 60% with the current champion.
I'll say slightly over.
All right, Matt. Quite a bit over. 1,017 total votes. 76 Moreno. 59% have the win by decision. For the 24% that have Figueiredo, 44% by decision, 38% by knockout. So we set it up in a certain way. What are we going with for a pick here?
I could see Figueiredo shocking everybody, hitting Brandon Moreno with a big shot and catching him with a guillotine on the way up. Because here's the thing people forget about Deiveson Figueiredo. He is such a good counter wrestler with his submission games that you don't want to shoot on him at all. Like, I don't want Brandon Moreno to shoot for a single takedown in this fight if I'm a Moreno believer. And I know he's got great top control. He's a phenomenal grappler in his own right. But that guillotine from Figueiredo is terrifying. It's one of those guillotines where the second you see it locked in, you're like, oh, he's going to tap immediately. Like, you're yelling at your TV. It's just inevitable, the result. Alex Perez was having some success early on in his fight with Figueiredo. The second he went for a takedown, Figueiredo got him in that guillotine, and the fight was over. I worry about those types of big moments from Figueiredo because of his big power on the feet and because of his submission ability, but I feel like we're seeing Brandon Moreno just enter his prime, and we're kind of seeing Figueiredo maybe step aside from his, because Figueiredo, I know he's the smaller guy height-wise in this fight, but he is huge for the flyweight division, and this weight cut's never been easy for him. Again, I always go back to that headline of when he fought Juicy Formiga, and after he lost that fight, he's like, yeah, Juicy's pretty good, but I also cut like 42 pounds before this fight. And when you're cutting 40 pounds at the heavyweight division, it's one thing. But when you're this small, like, that is a huge percentage of your body weight. And ever since that quote, I've always worried about Figueiredo making this cut down to 125 pounds.
And then he missed it in his first title shot.
Exactly. So there's been evidence that this has never been an easy weight cut for Figueiredo. And weight cutting doesn't get easier as you get older. And since a lot of people point to a tough weight cut as to why he was less durable in his last matchup, I like Brandon Moreno quite a bit in their third fight.
I've got Moreno in this one as well. Again, a guy with staying power. A guy who, whether it be Brandon Royval, and we're going to grapple a little bit, we're going to throw, he was able to beat him in that area. Askar Askarov is one of the best grapplers. I wouldn't say jiu-jitsu players. I wouldn't say wrestlers. He's probably, he could be the best grappler in this division, and he's a guy that nobody, unless you're Marcel Dorff, really talks about in that air. Askar Askarov's that good. Brandon Moreno had a great fight against him.
Took his back.
Make a case either way, but he was able to do that in that fight. So there's a lot of things that I really like out of Moreno. Again, what the work, whether it's at the PI, whether it's at Entram, he definitely has the right crew around him, but Deiveson Figueiredo's made those investments, moving everything to win this fight once and for all, and moving it to fight ready. So if you can make a strong case either way, I'm willing to listen to it. So let us know over in the comment section who you have in the first of two title fights. Both of us going with Mexico's Brandon Moreno to retain in the third fight. I can't wait for this fight. It's going to be a great one. And in your main event, Bad Blood. You know, Taylor Swift wrote a song about that, and then she re-recorded it, and it's probably playing on the radio right now. I can't wait for it. Gane taking on Ngannou. You can't wait for it. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.